Hello, welcome back to the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast. I am Lindsay Dollinger, and I'm here with my guest today, Ruthie Sterrett. So, Ruthie, tell us all the things. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the show, Lindsay. I'm excited to be here. My name's Ruthie Sterrett, and I am the founder of the Consistency Corner, which is a marketing agency to support small business owners who are scaling and ready to get to the next level, but don't have quite the capacity for their internal marketing department. So we meet you where you are in that if you're ready to outsource, we can do content for you. But even if you're not quite ready to take that level of investment, we do content coaching to help you have a roadmap to kind of know what to do with your marketing strategy and your content strategy over the next quarter. So I have been doing this for just about a year now, but got my start in retail marketing and retail management. And, it's funny because I started out in network marketing. And while I was learning the ropes of network marketing, was also learning the ropes of real life marketing, I guess you could say. But so much of what I was learning in the network marketing space helped me with the company that I was at, and that I was given the opportunity to work in the marketing department and then lead the marketing department without any experience. So all of the things that I learned being in the network marketing world really helped me figure out like, oh, this is something that I'm really passionate about, branding, marketing strategy, and figuring out, because I did work for a small company, how to do marketing scrappy. Because it's super easy to look at the really big guys or your competitors or people who've been doing it a lot longer than you and think like, well, it must be nice. They can do this, but I can't. But I'm here to tell you that there is definitely ways to do it at scale, no matter where you are in business, to get to that next level.
I love that. And I know we've talked about this before with our history in network marketing, but there is so much potential in learning the ropes through network marketing because you have so much support from uplines, companies, all those things. And it's a really easy investment, I guess, or I guess low investment and an easy way to get your foot in the door trying something new. So I love
Yeah,
it.
and to just kind of learn those basics. And, I think it can be really overwhelming for a business owner. And I talk to so many business owners who they might be absolutely amazing at what they do. It's their zone of genius, but they're like, but I don't know anything about marketing, so my business isn't growing. And my thought is like, I taught myself how to do this. And if I can teach myself, I can teach you and I can help you understand the basics so that you can be successful. You can create content that makes an impact and an income, and you're not held back by that overwhelm of what to do next.
So, what are some things when you're talking to clients or potential clients when they're coming to you that they either, it's there's an obvious like skill there, or I don't know if it's necessarily skill, but like, what are
Knowledge.
some of their issues? Yeah, what are those things that they're not really understanding that you're like, yeah, it's an obvious thing that I can help you with.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the first thing is that we all scroll and we listen to the Instagram expert. And the Instagram expert, they're not feeding you lies, but they're telling you tips that are often going to be much more helpful in your chapter 3 or your chapter 5 or your chapter 10, and maybe not so applicable to your chapter 1. There's foundations that have to be built around your branding before you can really start applying some of those other things. Or if you do start applying some of those other things, you're probably going to have to circle back and do them again or keep doing them once you've got your brand foundation established and you've gotten more, kind of confident in who your brand is. The other thing that I see is everybody wants microwave results. Everybody wants things to happen immediately. But just like building a house, if we don't put that work into the foundation in the beginning, even if you do get great results right away, which isn't super common, but if you do, it's not lasting because you haven't put that time and that energy into building the foundation of the brand. And you can grow fast. It's possible, but it's much more likely for you to grow slowly over time while learning as you go. And that's just not the sexy thing that people want to talk about.
Yeah, I hear that all the time from people. Or like you said, they compare themselves just starting out to like you who's been in business and you're like, it's not going to be the same because I have an established following. So what are some of those basics of your foundation or maybe of your brand that someone can get started today, like thinking about or start adding into what they're doing in their business?
Yeah. So I definitely think your mission, vision, and values, and particularly your mission and your values, because that really gets back down into not only who you are, but who is the customer that you serve. And are you attracting that right customer? And again, going back to the analogy of like building a house, is those things are like the foundation of the house. And it can be not as fun to pick out and work on those things as it is to pick out paint colors and flooring and light fixtures, which those are like the colors and the fonts and the logos. That part is much more fun. But once we get really clear on who we're trying to serve, what our values are, and how we can connect with our customers through our values, and what our mission is, all that other stuff makes such a bigger difference. And so I challenge business owners to take the time to think through that stuff. And when you're a solopreneur, sometimes you think like, oh, well, I know all that stuff, but it's in your head and it's not getting it out on paper. And so once we get it out on paper, it can become so much easier to communicate to your audience. And then as your business grows, it becomes easier to grow your team because you're able to communicate those things to them so that then your brand image and your brand story stays consistent with your growth and your expansion.
Is it important for us to make sure our audience knows our mission? If so, like, how do we convey that to them? How often do we convey that to them? What can that look like?
Yeah, I love having your mission on your website somewhere. It doesn't have to be front and center, but somewhere your about page or maybe even your contact page or something like that so that it's out there. I think sprinkling it into your content, whether it's social media content, an email nurture series, that would be a great place to connect because at the end of the day, like there are billions of places that people can spend their money. And when they make the decision to who they're going to spend their money with or what they're going to spend their money on, they're much more likely to spend their money on an organization that has a mission that they align with. So it is helpful to share it with the world. And if you're not like 100% sure what your mission is, that's okay. It's certainly something that can evolve over time. Most companies revisit their mission statement at least once a year, and it can change and it can evolve. And this is one thing that I want to kind of hit on too is the difference between your mission and your vision. So your mission is kind of who you serve, what you do, why. That's kind of the basics of it. I help this person or people do this because. Your vision is more what you hope to do in the future. And your vision is more for your internal team and you than it is for the external customer.
That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. And thank you for saying that it could evolve because I was wondering that because I'm like, I feel like my mission has changed a lot as I have pivoted and evolved too. So I think that's
Yeah, and
really
one of the things I listen to, one of my favorite authors is Donald Miller, who's the founder of the Story Brand concept and Story Brand framework. And he talks a lot about your personal mission versus your business mission. And they can be two different things. They're probably going to be a little bit aligned, but then I listen to another business coach, and I wish I could remember his name because I want to give him credit, but he was a speaker in a workshop and he talked about mission, vision, values, and your why. And your
Mhm.
why is kind of like your personal mission. And that's
Mhm.
again the thing that you're going to share with your internal team because
Yeah.
they're going to care. And you
Yep.
might share that with some customers like in conversation, but that's
Mhm.
not something that you're probably going to like shout from the rooftops and put on your website, but that's what drives you. And the like
Yeah.
your people, your tribe will connect with that. And that's again your why is like your personal mission and then the company mission might be a little bit different.
So when you sit down with someone for the first time or even every time that you sit down with them, do you go over the brand and the mission and all of that before you start creating your content?
Yes, absolutely. So we want to make sure that we understand those things so that we can create content that conveys those types of feelings and those goals. And again, a lot of times business owners have those things in their head, but they haven't put it on paper. And it's helpful for them to put it on paper but because it helps you kind of flush out where you are. But it's also helpful when you are outsourcing your content or having somebody help you with your content, because then I'm able to completely wrap my head around who you are as a brand, who are the customers that you're looking to serve, what makes you special or unique in the marketplace, and then tying all of that in together so that we can build your brand and create content that's consistent with who your brand is and wants to be.
I love it. So, do you have a certain social media channel that you prefer that you recommend to people, or does it kind of depend on the business?
It depends on the business and it depends on the person. I always want people to start with one, get comfortable with that one, feel good about it. And then if it makes sense, we can repurpose and layer in to other content channels. But like for me, I tried TikTok. It's not for me. So I'm not spending my energy on it. I talk to a lot of people about LinkedIn because I'll say to them, you know what? I really think your audience is on LinkedIn. Let's talk about this. And they'll be like, yes, they are. Or I just haven't put my energy there. So, okay, let's try that. Or, it's like I'm on Instagram, but my customer's not on Instagram. Okay, well, maybe we need to figure out where your customer is. So it's starting with one and balancing that between what you like, especially if you're the one creating the content and putting it out there, and then where your customer is so that you can connect with them. And, I talk about this a lot when we do our quarterly marketing strategies and content plans is get good and consistent at the one thing. And then next quarter, we can layer in another thing. But what happens, I see so many people, especially when they're growing and scaling their business, is they want to try 10 new things at once. And then they either can't get consistent with any of them, so they don't know what works, or something works, but they actually don't know what because they tried so many things at once. So I really coach and like to push to one new thing at a time, get good at it for a month or two, even a whole quarter, and then we can layer in another thing.
I think that's so smart because I was actually just talking to my coach last night about my podcast and about all this growth that I was seeing. And he's like, "Well, what have you done?" And I was like, "Well, I did this and this and this." So we're not really sure which is the thing that actually moved it forward versus
Yeah. And sometimes when you are looking to grow quickly, if there's two things that you layer in, like I get that. I can get on board with that. But then it's a matter of can you, and you got to be really honest with yourself here, is can I be consistent enough with that thing at an intensity that is actually going to make an impact for it to be worth my time? I tried that with um Pinterest at one point. It was like, okay, I'm going to start pinning things, but I couldn't be consistent with it. So it was like,
yeah,
okay, we're going to take this and put it over here on the shelf until we can get consistent with it. And sometimes as you are growing and scaling, that getting consistent looks like outsourcing to a team member, a VA, a content strategist, a marketing team, because you are only one person and can only do so much on your own. And that's one thing that I can tell you as a network marketer and small business owners is that we're starting to see it, but I would say 5 years ago, people didn't talk about the fact that they had a team and the
yeah,
fact that they had help. And so if you look at anybody who is at a certain level of success that you are aspiring to be, just remember they probably have support. If you're
yeah.
feeling like, why can't I get it all done?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that because I do feel like more people need to share that. Like I am very upfront. I'm like, I had a VA for a while and I talked about her all the time. Currently, I have someone helping me with my social media because
Mhm.
there's just not enough hours in the day. And it's so funny. People are like, "I'm literally staying with you right now, and you just posted. How did you do that?" I'm like, "Well, it's one, it's scheduled, but two, I also have someone else doing it for me right now." So
Yeah, and when like you have a full-time job, and so I know some people that they have a full-time job and a side hustle, and they'll be like, "Well, my business isn't making enough money to justify me hiring somebody." It's
yeah,
like, "Okay, but your full-time job is technically an investor in
yeah,
your income stream that takes up 40 plus hours of your time.
yeah.
So you don't have the time to do it yourself. So you've
Mhm.
got to invest to get to that next level sometimes because there's only so much of you to go around."
Yeah, 100%. And you will just run yourself ragged.
Mhm.
Like, I was just reading through what we were gonna talk about on this podcast, which we are talking about, but you were talking about stopping the scroll.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like well, first of all, if I'm literally doing everything in my business, I don't have time to scroll. Like,
Yeah.
let's just say that. But also I feel like we can also feel so stuck when creating our content, and then we get stuck in that scroll pattern. Like, I'm just going to scroll for some ideas and some inspiration. Then we get in our heads, the comparison game starts. It's like this double-edged sword. Double-edged sword.
Yeah. Yeah. And that whole conversation around stopping the scroll. So that came to me when I was working full time. Plus, I was running my business on the side. And in my full time job, I was a marketing director. So I oversaw social media profiles for 16 different profiles at the time. And so I was like constant, and I did a million other things, but I was constantly on social media. And then when I would spend time on social media outside of work for either my business, my own business, or just personally, I would find myself spending 30, 45 minutes, an hour, finish that scroll session, put my phone down, and think, that didn't add any value to my life. I
Mhm.
got nothing out of that. And what happens is when we scroll, sometimes we see a funny meme. Sometimes we see an inspiring quote. Sometimes we see a great photo from a friend that we love to see. So then we're chasing it. We're moving our finger
Mhm.
until we get that hit of that thing that we're looking for. And if we don't get it, we've just wasted all of this time. And so that was when I was like, okay, we got to put some boundaries in place here, because I just spent an hour of my life and it didn't benefit me one bit. And I feel drained constantly because I'm constantly on this app seeking and chasing that thing.
Yeah.
So I realized, like, I've got to put some boundaries in place. And so that's where I came up with the Stop the Scroll Challenge, which is a 5-day strategy to stop the scroll and the energy suck of social media without sacrificing your marketing strategy. Because as business owners, we do have to have a presence on social media. Like, I'm never going to tell you that you don't. And I will tell you that social media is not a marketing strategy. It's a container for your marketing strategy, but you have to have a system in place so that you can use it without the overwhelm and the like drain that it can cause.
So what do you recommend for that? Do you recommend, like, creating content just, like, without getting on social and, like, scheduling it out? Or how are you able to avoid social when you are, in fact, going to be social?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, I've got the free 5-day challenge, and so I'm sure you can link that in the show notes for everybody, because that will walk you through all the steps, but I'll share 2
Cool.
steps here. One of those is to be aware of how much time you're spending and to set some boundaries in place for yourself to pull back a little bit. I mean, if I check my app limits and it says that I
Mhm.
spent, and this is no lie, sometimes 3 hours a day on Instagram, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, we gotta
Yeah.
cool it a little bit." And that means setting timers for myself. That means setting
Mhm.
app limits. That means sometimes when I'm in a super busy season, taking the app off of my phone and
Yeah.
only using it for my desktop. So it's those boundaries that are like
Mhm.
the first way to just kind of get it under control. The
Yeah.
second thing is to create before you consume. And that really is why I teach people to create a content plan. Because when you have a content plan that is based upon your brand values and your business goals, you don't need to sit down and scroll for inspiration. You've
Right.
got other ideas, and we've put those ideas into a content plan. And then you're going to sit down and spend that limited time that you have creating content and not just looking for ideas. And
Yeah.
the other thing too is when we look for ideas, and yes, I get inspiration and ideas from scrolling for sure. But if that's the only place that we're getting ideas and inspiration from, then your entire content strategy is copy paste of other people, and it's not
Mhm.
authentic to you. So we've got to get out of that habit so that you can create content that's authentic to you.
So I know you mentioned quarterly planning sessions, and then I know you also do some monthly ones. So which do you recommend? Both?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's break it
So
down. So the reason that I like quarterly planning, I love to have a quarterly strategy because I think 90 days is the perfect window of time to see if something works. You're giving it enough time to actually like get consistent with it and see if it actually works and get results. So what I will do is I will create a quarterly kind of roadmap for what am I talking about in my long form content? what am I talking about in emails, and what am I talking about in social media, and what's the consistency that I'm going to do each of those things for this quarter. So then monthly, when I sit down to batch create monthly, because I batch create monthly, the quarterly plan is the recipe for me to follow. So instead of walking into my kitchen and throwing together a bunch of random ingredients and trying to come up with a meal, I've already written out the recipe so I can just like walk in and grab them and put them together. So it makes
Like,
that monthly session that much more efficient. And I know in the beginning it can be really difficult to go from not batching at all to monthly batching. And so I encourage people to try weekly first, and
mhm.
then after you get good at weekly batching, to move to monthly, because it actually saves you more time. You know, if it takes you, let's say, 2 hours to batch a week's worth of content, it won't take you 8 hours to batch a month's worth. It might take
Yeah,
you six, because of the habits that your brain is in as you work through those tasks. So batching a month at a time really does save you time, but it only saves you time when you've got a recipe and a plan to
yeah.
follow.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, I love that analogy. So just curious, do you write your captions first? Do you make graphics first? Like what does your I'm just
I
like
love that question because I
thinking
always love
before
to know
this.
where people's brains are. I make
Yeah.
graphics and images first.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so I choose my theme and my idea and kind of what I'm talking about. That's actually really step number one. Then for me, step number two is graphics and captions. And then step number three is copy and caption writing. And that's probably because writing is not my favorite. It's my least favorite. So I
Mhm.
hold that till the end because that's the like task that is probably the least exciting for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
I ask people that all the time, and it's like 50-50. Some people it works better for
Yeah.
them to do captions first. And so I tell people to play around with it and try different things and see what you like best.
That's so interesting because I would never think to do it that way. Like I would always take like the written part and then see what I came up with and then make the graphics. So that's so funny that our brains work in a different way.
Yeah.
Like that's why I was curious.
And I have
And I'm glad.
clients that because copywriting is not my favorite, like I have clients where I have a copywriter doing the captions. And
Mm,
so even with them, sometimes that's funny that we are now talking about this. Some of them I'll select the images and then they write the captions. Other times they write the captions first and I'll go in
mhm.
and then select the images afterwards. So it has to do
Oh,
with
cool.
kind of like the client. And so we do it a little bit
Yeah.
different for different clients.
Oh, that's so fun. That's interesting. So, do you find this is maybe more of an Instagram question? Because your feed is beautiful, and I know I've told you that before. Do you find that pictures or graphics right now are doing better if your face is on it, if they're not? Like, what would you kind of recommend visually as far as content goes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say it's very dependent upon the type of business. I can say with most of my clients that when we have a graphic or an image with a person, it performs well. But you cannot always get the information across that you need to with that type of image. So there's a place for graphics that are more words. And another thing that I will tell people is they'll say, "Well, this post didn't do very well, nobody liked it."
Mm,
The intent of the post wasn't to get people to like it. The intent of the post was to teach something and give value to your audience. And just because they didn't like it doesn't mean that they didn't read it. And
right.
so thinking about our metrics, reach is just as important as comments and likes, and saves and shares can tell you if you're resonating with your audience, because different posts are doing different things. That's another
Mhm.
kind
Yeah.
of content insider tip is you've got to have content out there that talks about your offer, because you don't want people to just like think this is a hobby and you do it for fun. Like you're in business to be in business.
Yeah.
Your posts that talk about your offer, they're not going to get a lot of engagement.
Yeah.
But if you never put them out there, people don't know that you have
I
an
think
offer.
it
So
does.
when they're ready
Yes.
to buy, they don't even know that you do that thing
Mhm.
because you didn't
Yep.
talk about it. So I definitely tell people, like, don't get hung up on the metrics. And that's another reason that we do a quarterly content plan, is because then we can look from a 10,000 foot view, are we talking about our offer enough? Are we offering enough value through educational content? Are we resonating with our audience on an emotional level? Do we have content that is out here to attract, to nurture, and convert? And we can look at it as a whole for the quarter, because when you're in the weeds week to week, I find so many business owners either do way too much nurturing, where all
Mhm.
they're doing is like helping and serving and educating, or the opposite, they get stuck in selling mode and all they're doing is talking about their offering. And we've got to have a balance.
So what does that balance look like? Because I get this question all the time. I'm curious, what is the good ratio of giving value and selling, or is there?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the marketing funnel, and not just looking at your social media. Again, your social media is not your marketing strategy. It's a container. So it's one of the containers for your content that will either attract, nurture, or convert. When I think about the funnel, it's inverted for a reason. So attract is the biggest, nurture is in the middle, and convert is the smallest. So the biggest amount of effort that we should be putting out there is in attract marketing. Now, that doesn't mean I want you to go do dances on TikToks and Reels if that's not who you are. But do you have a long form content strategy that is optimized for SEO so people can find you? Are you spending time networking, podcast guesting, talking to people, so that they know you exist? That's an attract strategy that has nothing to do with social media. So that's certainly something that you can spend your time. And then on social media, doing things like using geotags or targeted hashtags. Quotes are great ways to have attract marketing because they're really shareable. They can get in front of different people. And then, like, your educational content is nurture. And then you're like, hey, this is my offer. That's your convert.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I don't think we talk about the marketing funnel on here enough.
Yeah.
Like, I think that might be the first time it's been mentioned, actually.
Yeah, and when people think about social, I was just talking to somebody. Oh, I said this on my podcast this week, that if you're looking for the magic silver bullet that will attract, nurture, and convert all at once, like, just stop. It doesn't exist.
Yep.
One piece of content is not going to change your business. It
Yeah.
is the compound effect of all of them together. And different pieces of content serve different purposes, and you've got to make sure that you're doing all of them. And when you're starting out in the beginning, I can tell you, it can be very easy to spend a lot of time on nurture and convert because you've got a warm audience of people who know who you are, who,
Right.
they already know you. You have history with those people. And then as you grow and you want to grow and you want to fill that top of funnel, it can feel like I'm doing all of this work, but it's not working. It's not leading to sales.
Yep.
Well, it's not leading to sales yet because those people have to move down the marketing
Oh,
funnel.
right.
You're not going to be on a podcast today and sell 10 offers tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
now you've filled the top of your funnel. And I remember, even, I mean, worked for a multi-million dollar company, and we would spend no money on ad dollars. And we could have a whole nother conversation about ads, but we would spend no money on attract awareness campaigns. And I was like, people don't know we exist. And so it became a conversation of, we have to spend part of our budget on awareness marketing or have activations that are around truly awareness marketing. It's not about conversion, because
Right.
then you'll grow because people will move through the funnel and you
Yeah.
can convert those new people over time.
Well, and I'm glad you said that because I do hear a lot of that frustration because they're doing the things except the attracting the new people. And it's like we have to be getting people from somewhere. Um, I have a friend and a client who we were actually just talking earlier today, and we were talking about our Facebook business page because she hires people to post on it. Which is great. I'm so proud of her for delegating because there's a lot of people who, are really afraid of doing that. And then she sent me the numbers and I was like, girlfriend, we got to get some more people liking this page because like you have this amazing content, but if people aren't liking this page, well, they're not going to see it. And like you know
Yeah, and the thing about Facebook business pages is, because Meta is a business, they are in the selling ad dollars and the pay to play space, that Facebook business pages, they don't reach people the way they used to.
Right, right.
And so in order for people to find your page, you've got to be networking. You've got to be in community. You've got to have long form content that points people back over to that page. And then all the great content that you're putting out there. I think Instagram people are a little bit more discoverable than they are on Facebook.
Mhm.
But you're
Yeah.
right. You've got, and I even have a client, like we have a client, I have a client that we were just having this conversation with. We started an Instagram and a Facebook page for them probably 6 months ago. And we were having this conversation about the client said to me, he said, Ruthie, you create all this great content. I just want people to see it. Like nobody's seeing it. And I was like, okay, well, here's how we attract more people. You need to get on podcasts. You're going to trade shows. We're creating blog posts that people are going to find via search. And then we have calls to action to follow us on social. We can run ads. Like
Yeah. There's a
great
whole
content
strategy.
will attract people, but it takes time
Yep.
until
Yep.
you fuel it with other things.
Yeah, 100%. So I know you have your podcast, The Consistency Corner, which I love how you just kind of tied that in with your content just a little while ago. Um, so do you start with podcast and or blog and then funnel content down? So like, do you start with long form content?
Yeah, I do. So I start with long form content, and I do with my podcast, I do one solo episode a month, and then my other weeks are guest episodes. So
Okay.
I take, and I actually did this for the first time this year, and it's really helped my content planning. I just like many business owners, I have several different offers. I have done for you offers, done with you, do it yourself, and freebies. So I kind of looked at my year and said, okay, each month, what is my product focus for that month?
Mhm.
And then I thought of a content topic for my podcast that could relate back to that offer. And then that's my content for my podcast, my solo podcast. We'll turn that podcast into a blog. We'll create social posts and emails that pull from that content so that we're repurposing it. And then my freebie, one of my lead magnets that I offer is a monthly content co-working session. I'll teach on that topic live in the co-working session.
Mhm.
So you're working smarter, not harder by repurposing.
Right.
And for me, it was really helpful to map it out for the entire year.
Yeah, I bet.
Now, I couldn't do that a year ago because
Mhm.
my business wasn't in a place to know what the offers were or what I wanted to do. Like I was still experimenting. So I will tell
Right.
people all the time, it's okay if you can't map out a year. You're not there yet, but we
Yep.
can map out a quarter and that'll give you insights and learning. So then for the next quarter, we can get even better and the next quarter and then 4 quarters down the road, now we're in a place that we can plan for the year.
Do you and this is the last question because I know I'm just I'm just so curious about all of exactly what you do. Do you recommend to your clients who are just on social, for example, that they do start a blog and a website if maybe they're a network marketer and they don't need one for people to shop through it? Would you still recommend having some place where people can find them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. What I would say, because I know a website is an investment.
Mm.
Number one, you can create a website on Canva that is completely free. You can buy your domain, you can point it back to the Canva domain.
Mhm.
That's a great starting place if
Yeah.
you're not in a place to invest in a website. Number two, if you're not ready for a long form content container like a podcast or a blog, start with an email newsletter once a month. But save that email newsletter in a Google Doc because that's a future blog post when
Yes.
you are ready to get that website and that long form content up and you've already written it. If you're like, Ruthie, I don't even have an email newsletter, well, we got to get you there. But if you don't have that, start with one meaty social media post.
Mm.
And that's your long form for the month. And take that meaty post where you like really pack in a lot of value and then repurpose it and break it down into more and smaller posts. And same thing, save that meaty post in a Google Doc because you can repurpose it into a blog in the future.
Yeah, that's so smart to save your post into a doc, guys. I had a website before my current one because my first website was me when I was a travel blogger, and when I switched gears, I just like it sounds so dumb as I'm saying, and I'm like I don't even know what I was thinking. I just let it expire and didn't like I didn't save anything, and it's so interesting because now I have like the Disney branch of my brand, and a lot of my posts were Disney posts. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
dang it.
it's something I guest blogged for, Sarasota Mom's blog for a while, and I wrote, I don't know, 5 or 6 blog posts that, like, they're not super relevant, but there's a couple that I've been like, "Oh, that would be helpful in talking about retail," or, "Oh, I could use this,"
Yeah,
and that business was sold, the domain expired, I didn't save any of the content because I just
yeah.
thought like, "Oh, it's on the internet, I can always get it," like,
Right,
not
right, yeah.
really.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm pivoting, like, this doesn't make sense anymore," like, I'm not gonna be sharing packing lists with people and blah, blah, but, yeah, there's some things I'm like, "Dang it, I really wish I could have
Yes.
directed back to that or just put it on my page. Maybe some more people would have found me and been interested." And so,
Yes,
yes, save everything, back everything up.
for sure.
Learn from both of us. All right, Ruthie, so where can everyone connect with you? How can people work with you? And guys, I will also link all of this in the show notes so you can just have clickable links.
Yeah, so I am the Consistency Corner on Instagram. That's where I mostly hang out. So find me there, and then grab the Consistency Corner's Stop the Scroll Challenge on my website. Lindsay will link it, but it's theconsistencycorner.com/stop the scroll. Because that really will give you all 5 steps in order to limit your time on social media, so that you can take your energy back without sacrificing your marketing strategy.
I love that. Love that so much. So definitely check that out, guys. And yes, everything will be linked. And if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, I believe everything is already linked for you. So there you go. Awesome, Ruthie. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And we will connect with you all soon.
Yes.